All right. Well, just like usual, at the beginning of this week's each week's message, we'll be looking at a little bit from last week, and sometimes even surprisingly, maybe the week before. So, all right. So last week we talked about the myths surrounding the birth of Jesus Christ. That was last week's message. So I'm going to ask you some questions to see. And for those of you who weren't here, you can always watch the message online. It's on YouTube. You can see it.
Did you post it?
Yeah, I posted it on Facebook. I think Angela just recently posted it on her Facebook page.
I don't know if you saw that.
I haven't been online
Okay.
in
Yeah.
a couple days.
So
I put it on my wall for you.
it's not necessarily crucial to have that message in your head for this week's message, but it'd probably be good to listen to it for next week. Okay, so regarding the myths surrounding the birth of Jesus, were Mary and Joseph rejected by like a modern-day hotel manager or an innkeeper? No? Okay. Is there any mention of an innkeeper in the Bible? In the story? Sure isn't. Were they trying to get a room at a hotel? No. Where were they trying to get a room at? Where did you say, Jenna? A guest room. And where's the guest room usually located? The top of a regular house. Top of a regular house. We're not talking about a hotel which has all these vacancies, and you come in, you check in at the front desk, and the innkeeper either says we have a vacancy or we don't, and you get a key to your room and go check in. We're talking about when they said inn back then, and we looked at other verses regarding this in the book of Acts and also in Matthew during the Passover, that it was an upper room of a house, a regular house, it's a guest room of a house. I mean, compared to the guest room they have here at their house. Yeah, it's a lower room in this house. They put their guests in the basement here. But no, I take good care of them, though. Okay, so there was no hotel to go stay at. Was Jesus born in a wooden stable?
No.
What was he probably born in? That's right. Animals weren't kept in wooden stables back then. They were kept in caves. And we can deduce from the fact that he was laid in a manger, which is an animal feeding trough, that he was probably born where animals stay. How many kings came to visit Jesus, Mary, and Joseph? There's 0 kings. We know that 0 kings came to visit them because kings weren't even mentioned in the story. It's actually who? Wise men or magi. That's who came to visit Mary, Jesus, and Joseph. Now, where do these magi come from? The East. Do we know exactly where in the East?
No.
No, but we did come up with a couple of ideas of possibly where they came from. Possibly Babylon, right? Babylon. Now, why do we think Babylon? What did you say, John? Daniel, that's right. Daniel was in Babylon. He was in captivity. And he was named the chief administrator of the Magi. And I'm sure he didn't use his influence in vain. I mean, he must have taught them the scriptures and used his influence in a positive way to turn these Magi who were practicing occult practices, turn them into godly people who would look at God's creation, the stars, and be interpreters of dreams. Was Jesus still a baby in a manger when the Magi came to visit? No. He was a child, different Greek word, the same Greek word used to talk about a toddler. And was he still living in a cave? No, he was in a house now. So a lot of the stories we see going around and the little ornaments we have at Christmas time, the stories we see, even some of the songs, the Three Kings song, they're not accurate sometimes. So we need to make sure we're being accurate to the scriptures. Okay? And being that we discussed last week so many myths surrounding the birth of our Lord and Savior Jesus, it only seemed fitting to discuss the rest of the myths regarding Jesus' birthday. Okay? So today we're going to discuss when Jesus was born. The question of when he was born is one that many would like answered. And I'm not just talking about month and day, December 25th, as some believe he was. I'm also referring to the year he was born. Did you know that AD stands for Anno Domini, which is Latin and means year of our Lord? You know, when I was growing up, I wasn't told this. I always thought AD meant after death, and BC meant before Christ. So you got BC before Christ, after death. What happened to his life, the 30-something years that were in between? Is there some kind of life in between called DC during Christ or something like that? I mean, where happened to that? So there was a lot of confusion for me when I was growing up of where this in-between period went. But when I found out that AD means Anno Domini, which is Latin for year of our Lord, it made more sense to me because now we're not missing any years. But unfortunately, we're not going to be discussing the year of his birth. in this message, because that's just I've been studying this backwards and forward all week and last week, and I'll tell you, man, to talk about that, there's so many things to talk about when it comes to the year of his birth. So we're going to try to cover our best today about the day he was born, the actual day he was born. And the first place we're going to go is to the Bible. Okay, in fact, that's really the only place we're going to go. We're not going to look at any secular sources for information. I'm going to use the Bible because I know it's reliable. It's God's Word. It's inspired. I could have went, if I wanted to talk about the years, but I could have went to secular sources to look at the years that Tiberius reigned and Caesar Augustus reigned. I could have probably figured out a little bit from there, but I really wanted to go to the Bible and see if we can find some clues in the Bible to give us an idea of what day Jesus was born. So let's go to Luke 1:5 first to start out with. Luke chapter 1 and verse 5. And that says, "There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias, of the division of Abijah. His wife was of the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth." So do you see any clues right there in verse 5 that we can use, maybe, to figure out the day that Jesus was born? Anybody see anything?
When Herod was reigning.
Okay, when Herod was... But how do we know? We can't figure that out from the Bible alone, because the Bible doesn't give us a date on when Herod reigned. But it says Zacharias is of the division of Abijah. Okay? And we're going to go back... Let's go back to First Chronicles in chapter 24. And you're going to see how this ties in here. And we're also going to go to the Jewish calendar system to see how this all works, to figure this out. Okay? And 1 Chronicles chapter 24, we'll start in verse 1, and we'll read through verse 10. Now these are the divisions of the sons of Aaron. The sons of Aaron were Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. And Nadab and Abihu died before their father, and had no children. Therefore Eleazar and Ithamar ministered as priests. Then David with Zadok and the sons of Eleazar and Ahimelech of the sons of Ithamar divided them according to the schedule of their service. There are more leaders found of the sons of Eleazar than of the sons of Ithamar, and thus they were divided. Among the sons of Eleazar were 16 heads of their fathers' houses, and 8 heads of their fathers' houses among the sons of Ithamar. So you have 16 and 8, that's 24 altogether. Okay? Thus they were divided by lot, one group as another, for there were officials of this officials of the sanctuary and officials of the house of God, from the sons of Eleazar and from the sons of Ithamar. And the scribe Shemaiah, the son of Nathaniel, one of the Levites, wrote them down before the king, the leaders, Zadok the priest, Ahimelech the son of Abiathar, and the heads of the fathers' houses of the priests and Levites. One father's house taken for Eleazar and one for Ithamar. Now it's going to tell you they casted lots. Okay, there's 24 altogether. Now they're going to cast lots to see how they're going to come to and minister in the temple. Okay, the first lot fell to Jehoiarib, the second to Jediah, the third to Hiram, the fourth to Searim, the fifth to Melchijah, the sixth to Mejamin, the seventh to Hakaz, the eighth to Abijah. So we're going to stop right there at Abijah. I'm not going to read through all those names and chop them up anymore. But you have at the 8th week, the 8th division was Abijah. So each one of these divisions of the priests, there's 24 altogether, would serve for 1 week in the temple. And they would go in this order, 24. Okay? Now in the Jewish calendar, there's about 51 weeks. Okay? Question?
So they split it up. They each had a week, and then they came back around for the next week.
Right. So we had 24 altogether. Okay? 51 weeks, about 51 weeks in the Jewish year. All right? And so they would serve for each one would serve for 1 week by themselves as a group, a division of the priests, whoever came from this lineage. Now, Zacharias is from Abijah, so he would serve in the 8th week. But also, there's 3 weeks during the year in which all the priests would serve. Okay, these are the main festivals. You have Pentecost, which is Nisan. Nisan is in fact, let me pass these out before I go any further so you guys can kind of follow along with the calendar here. This is the Jewish calendar on the top there. And you can find the order of the Jewish priests on the bottom. And to kind of, I go through Abijah here just so you can see for yourself. Yeah, about 51 weeks. Okay, so about 51 weeks, and I'm going to show you here from what I just gave you how they're divided up. Okay. So at the top of this handout I just gave you, you see the Jewish calendar. You see the Hebrew word, the number month it is to the all the way to the left, the Hebrew word for the month, then the English transliteration of that month. So the first month is called Nisan. It's 30 days in length, and it corresponds with our March and April. Okay? So you have, if you go down to the bottom part, which is the order of the Jewish priest, you see it breaks down the first month, Nisan, the second month of Iyar, and the third month of Sivan. And you see who served each week. The first week was the first division of the priests, then the second division, and then the third week, all the priests came and served in the temple. And that didn't count as your week. If you're the third person up, it didn't count as your week. So the fourth week starts back to the third group again. Then the second month, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. The third month, the first week, you have all priests again for Pentecost. And then it goes on and continues from 7 to 8 now. So Abijah would have served in the second week of the third month on the Jewish calendar. Okay? So that's where we have him serving. Now, in the Jewish calendar, there's also something, if you look at the top part again, you see there's two 12s. That can be kind of confusing. In the Jewish calendar, it has something called a leap year. Now, in our leap year, we add 1 day. But we have a calendar that's 52 weeks long. Okay? Their calendar is 51 weeks long, so they have a leap month. Okay, so every 2 or 3 years, they add a whole month. So the bottom 12 you see here, called Adar, would actually be called Adar 2 during the leap years, and they would add a month right before that, in between the original 11 and 12. So in a period of about 19 years, you see leap years 7 times. So every 2 to 3 years, you see a leap year, and Jews kind of add a whole month to their calendar. Okay? But we're not going that far because, as you see, Abijah served before the leap month comes along. Okay? Before the leap year, before that month comes along. And he would actually serve a second time again before that. So that month doesn't affect Abijah at all. The course, the division of the priest that we're dealing with here. Okay? Okay, so Zacharias' division, Abijah was the 8th division, and being in the 8th division meant that he served during the second week of the third month, Sivan, in Jewish calendar. This is when Zacharias, when lots were cast, and he would have served in the temple, and Gabriel would have spoken to him during this second week of the third month in the Jewish calendar. Now, and he came out as a mute, as we all knew, because he didn't trust what Gabriel said. He questioned him, even though Gabriel was responding to prayers that Zacharias prayed. You see in Luke chapter 1, verse 13, it says, "But the angel said to him, 'Do not be afraid, Zacharias, for your prayer is heard. And your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, you shall call his name John.'" Now Gabriel's coming to answer his prayer, and he still doubts. There's something wrong with that. If you come to God and you're asking with doubt in your heart, there's something wrong. First of all, you come in here with confidence in your heart, and then God answers your prayer, and you're like, you don't believe it happened. There's something wrong with that even more. It reminds me of when all the saints in Acts were gathered together to pray for Peter's release, and then he showed up at the door and knocked on the door, and he opened the door, he's like, slam, and they ran back up the door. I said, Peter's there, and they didn't believe her. Well, you just prayed for his release. Is God going to answer your prayers or not? So God answered Zacharias' prayers. So even though he came out as a mute, he continued serving until the week was over. Look at Luke chapter 1, verse 23. It says, "So it was, as soon as the days of his service were completed, that he departed to his own house. Now after those days, his wife Elizabeth conceived, and she hid herself 5 months, saying, 'As the Lord has dealt with me, and the days when he looked on me to take away my reproach among people.'" So he completed his service. So he went to the end of the second week. He travels home. So now we're allowing some time for travel, for him to get home, to recover from his travel times. And by the end of the third week, we're going to say now, by the end of the third week, John the Baptist has been conceived. That's what we're going to say here, okay? So Mary, let's see, but Mary, the mother of Jesus, and relative Elizabeth found out about Elizabeth's pregnancy from the angel Gabriel. So we see in verse 26, but now in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent by God to a city of Galilee named Nazareth. So now we have not only Elizabeth being pregnant now for 5 months, and then in the 6th month, Gabriel comes to Mary and announces to her the pregnancy of her relative, Elizabeth. Okay? And it says the 6th month here in verse 26. Some people think it means the 6th month of the Jewish calendar, but I think verse 36 clarifies that. It says, now indeed Elizabeth, your relative, conceived a son in her old age, and this is now the 6th month for her, who is called barren. So she's 6 months pregnant as Gabriel comes to announce to Mary, your relative is pregnant. Okay? And Mary, of course, you see in verse 39 and 40, she went to visit Elizabeth and stayed there for 3 months, as verses 56 and 57 say of Luke chapter 1. Okay? And then she left to go back home. So she stayed for almost the whole pregnancy, to the very end of the pregnancy of Elizabeth. She got there about the 6th month mark and stayed almost to the very end. We don't know if she was there at the end or not. We just know that it says in verse 56 she returned to her house, and then in verse 57, if we're going chronologically here, Elizabeth's full time came for her to be delivered, and she brought forth a son. So it's possible that Mary left right before John the Baptist was born. So, if John was conceived shortly after the 3rd Sabbath in Sivan, the 3rd month of the Jewish calendar, remember, we're giving about a travel time to recover from everything he's been through, and then he conceives with his wife right about this 3rd Sabbath in Sivan, the 3rd month on the Jewish calendar. He would have been born at the end of the 1st week or at the beginning of the 2nd week of Nisan, the 1st month of the Jewish calendar. Now I'm assuming that she had a normal pregnancy. Now, normal pregnancy is about 40 weeks, which is equal to 280 days. Okay? So let's go ahead and count this through. Look at your calendar for a minute with me, the top part of your handout I just gave you. Okay? And we're going to kind of count this through. So we take the last week of Sivan that's still left when he's conceived. That's 7 days still left in Sivan. And just add the numbers of days from each month following. We add the 29 days of Tammuz, 30 days of Av, 29 days of Elul. So we go all the way down and we add all the months up to Adar. And after we add up all the months up to the end of Adar, we're up to 272 days. Okay, you can do the math yourself later if you want to. But that leaves 8 days left, all to be in the month of Nisan. Okay, so that means that if she had a normal pregnancy, and if he was conceived at about the beginning of the 3rd Sabbath, then he would have been born on the 8th of Nisan. And that's all based on the fact, of course, that Elizabeth's pregnancy was a normal one. And that seems to be what the case is, as we look in Luke chapter 1 here. It looks like it was a normal pregnancy from what we can tell. John would have been born around the beginning to the middle of the month of Nisan. And this would have been around the Passover festival, which is the 15th of Nisan, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And you know the interesting thing about this, in my studying of this, I found out the Jewish people, even today, set out a special cup, a special goblet of wine during the Passover meal in anticipation of the arrival of Elijah that week, which is based upon the prophecy in Malachi 4. So John the Baptist was born right around Passover, right before Passover. And when did they get circumcised? The 8th day. So if he's born on the 7th day or the 8th day, he would have circumcised on the 16th day, which is right after the start of Passover. And they're leaving out a goblet of wine for Elijah. Now let's look at Malachi 4:5 and just kind of clarify what this prophecy says here. Malachi 4:5. And we can see from Malachi 4:1, this is obviously talking about the very end. It's talking about Judgment Day. It mentions that burning like an oven, all who are proud will be stubble. So this is talking about the very end here, when Christ comes back. And in verse 5 it says, of Malachi 4, it says, "Behold, I will send you Elijah, the prophet, before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord." So the Jews, based upon this prophecy, leave out a special cup of wine during the Passover meal because they're anticipating Elijah coming to have fellowship with them. But we know that John the Baptist wasn't literally Elijah, okay? Who will come before the great and dreadful day of the Lord, because that's the very end. And John the Baptist didn't come at the very end. So Malachi 4:5 is a double fulfillment. And one of the fulfillments is symbolic and one is literal. Listen to what the angel Gabriel said to John the Baptist's father in Luke 1:17. Talking about John the Baptist, his son. He will also go before him in the spirit and power of Elijah to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the disobedient to the wisdom of the just, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord. So in Luke 1:17, the angel Gabriel, speaking to Zechariah, John the Baptist's father, talking about John the Baptist, says that he will come in the spirit and power of Elijah. But when John the Baptist was asked whether he was Elijah or not by some Jewish priests and Levites, in John 1:20, he said, I am not. So he came in the spirit and power of Elijah, but he's not Elijah. And this clarifies what Jesus said in Matthew 17, verses 10 through 13, which says, and his disciples asked Jesus, saying, why then do the scribes say that Elijah must come first? Jesus answered and said to them, indeed, Elijah is coming first and will restore all things. But I say to you that Elijah has come already, and did not know him, but did to him whatever they wished. Likewise, the Son of Man is also about to suffer at their hands. The disciples understood that he spoke to them of John the Baptist. John the Baptist, he was Elijah who did come. He was also one who will come. He came in the spirit and power of Elijah, but he wasn't literally Elijah himself. So, the interesting thing about this whole thing is that they're leaving this cup of wine out for Elijah and the Passover meal. John the Baptist is born right before the Passover. He comes to get circumcised right about the Passover. And yet it says, yet the angel Gabriel said to John the Baptist that he shall drink neither wine nor strong drink. So he's not the literal Elijah coming. But he is the one who comes in the spirit and power of Elijah. And he came right around the time they were expecting the literal Elijah to come. And Jesus said he has already come. So, that's another way we can distinguish that he wasn't the actual Elijah who is to come, because he won't drink neither wine nor strong. So John the Baptist would come in the spirit and power of Elijah, had been born during the Passover festival, right around it, and the Jews leave a special cup of out for Elijah during that time. This Elijah shall never drink wine. And it kind of makes you wonder whether the real Elijah, who will come in the last days, as one of the witnesses, two witnesses talked about in Revelation 11, if he'll come during the Passover. It makes you wonder, because God is always fulfilling these things that traditions Jews have themselves, to kind of show them the facts, to show them the truth, to wake them up. So listen, I'm right here in your midst. I'm doing something. Wake up to the truth. So if we go back to when Elizabeth was only 6 months pregnant, we can count ahead 280 days from there to get the possible birth date of Jesus. Okay, because Mary, Jesus was conceived within Mary. The Gabriel came to Mary when Elizabeth was 6 months pregnant. So we count forward from there 280 days, we can possibly get the birth date of Jesus. Okay? We would do this because Elizabeth was 6 months pregnant when the angel spoke to Gabriel. Okay, Elizabeth would have been 6 months pregnant just after the third Sabbath in Kislev, which is the ninth month in the Jewish calendar. So at ninth month in the Jewish calendar, just after the let's see, it's right around the Jewish festival that's towards the end of Kislev, which is the first day of Hanukkah. Okay, so the first day of Hanukkah is the 25th day of Kislev. All right, is it possible that Jesus could have been conceived on this day? It's possible, because, in my experience of looking through these Jewish festivals and how God's worked in history, he doesn't do anything by accident. Anything at all by accident. But what Hanukkah does, it marks the rededication of the Second Temple in Jerusalem after it was desecrated by the forces of the king of Syria, Antiochus Epiphanes. And according to the Talmud, this is what happened when the temple was rededicated after it was defiled. They only had enough oil, consecrated olive oil, to fuel the eternal flame in the temple for 1 day. But miraculously, the oil burned for 8 days, which is the length of time that they needed to press, prepare, and consecrate fresh olive oil. That's why you see on the Jewish menorah, how many candles are there? There's 8. So they're doing this to celebrate this miracle that, according to tradition, happened during the rededication of the Second Temple after desecrated by by Antiochus Epiphanes, the king of Syria, and his army. So, and since Jesus calls himself the light of the world in John 8:12 and John 9:5 and John 12:46, it is definitely possible in my mind that he was conceived during the first day of Hanukkah. It makes sense. So, like I said, from my experience, God doesn't do anything by accident, so I believe Jesus could very well have been conceived at the beginning of Hanukkah. But let's just run with that first. Let's just say he was conceived on the first day of Hanukkah, the 9th month of the Jewish calendar, Kislev, the 25th day. And now we have about 5 days left in Kislev, okay? And let's count forward from there. We add the next month and the next month and the next, all the way up to the 6th month. We add all those months together. And now we have 270 days. Now, how many days is a woman in normal birth? Or pregnant? 280 days. So now we have 10 days left for the month of Tishri, which is the 7th month in the Jewish calendar. And guess what Jewish festival on the 10th day of Tishri? Anyone want to guess? Yom Kippur, which is also called the Day of Atonement. So it's actually possible, if all of these figurings are correct, that he was born on the Day of Atonement. Jesus Christ was born on the Day of Atonement. So, but what does that mean for our calendar? What day was he born on our calendar? Well, that's a good question. That depends on the year he was born. Because the Jewish calendar does not, like I said, we have these leap years with these whole months added onto it, so it kind of messes with our calendar a little bit. But there's a lot of people who I've read on this issue who believe he was born in 3 BC. And that's possible. I'm not completely convinced of it just yet, but it's possible. Let's just say he was for a second. If he was born in 3 BC, then he would have been born on September 21st, 3 BC. Okay? If it was 3 BC. According to our calendar. Our calendar would match up with the 10th of Tishri in 3 BC. It'd be September 21st, 3 BC. Now, I know this because I couldn't find a converter anywhere online that goes back before year 1. I found it goes back to year 1, but I couldn't get one that goes before year 1. So the only way I know it's 21st is because a reliable source calculated Tishri 1 to be September 12th, 3 BC. So you add 9 days to get Tishri 10, and you add 9 days to September 12th to get September 21st. But even if that year is wrong, even if 3 BC is wrong, we can say that he was at least born either in the second half of September or the first half of October in our calendar, no matter what year he was born. In fact, I used a Hebrew to our calendar converter online and checked about 40 years, for the last 40 years. And in the last 40 years, Tishri 10 falls in just about every day between September 15th and October 13th. In 40 years, the last 40 years. So I think we can say conclusively, without being completely conclusive, that I believe Jesus might have been born on Tishri 10, which would have been September 21st, 3 BC. But we do know for sure that he was born somewhere between September 15th and October 13th on our calendar. So, my conclusion about Jesus' birthday is that we can't be completely conclusive about it. And what does that tell us? What do you think that tells us? I mean, if God wanted us to know exactly when Jesus was born, do you think he would have made it clear for us? Sure. I mean, God doesn't have a problem communicating with his creation. He can be completely upfront about these things. Maybe we weren't meant to celebrate Jesus' birthday. Maybe that's it. Not that the modern day form of Christmas does that anyway. But we do know for sure that Jesus was not born December 25th. I know that for a fact. No doubt in my mind about it after all the studying I've done on this for the last couple of weeks. For most families, Christmas is a time to be on vacation from school and work, to put up a decorated tree in the house, to decorate the outside of your house, and most of all, to be covetous. That's what Christmas is all. That's what modern day Christmas is all about to most families. If God did want us to celebrate the birth of his son, I'm pretty sure that he wouldn't want us to celebrate in that form. Okay? What did the early church think about this issue? Maybe church history can help us with this issue of celebrating Jesus' birthday. Well, let's take a look at what the early church thought about this issue. That's it. They didn't say anything about it, which tells us a lot, because if they're not mentioning the birth of Jesus, they weren't celebrating the birth of Jesus. And none of the early church fathers who listed special festivals or special holidays ever listed Jesus' birthday as one of those holidays. And Christmas, being celebrated as December 25th, was not around until around the early mid-4th century in very small amounts. About 336 AD, I believe, is when it first started. And it wasn't until AD 440 that Christmas was officially celebrated by the church, and it was celebrated on December 25th. But even then, it was done on December 25th, not because of some biblical or historical evidence to point them to December 25th being Jesus' birthday. It was done December 25th because that was the last day of the pagan holiday named Saturnalia. That's why it was done then. They're trying to overtake a pagan holiday. At the very end, it was a very wicked pagan holiday. I read a little bit on last night online. It's horrible.
What is it again?
Saturnalia. And it was from December 17th to the 25th, I believe. About a week long. Saturn, Saturn, Alia. And during this festival, people would get drunk a lot. They would indulge sexually. They go around house to house singing, naked. But they would sing. That's a precursor to our modern day caroling. They would eat cookies and bread in the shapes of humans. There'd be animal sacrifice. All kinds of wicked things involved in it. So they were kind of just trying to take over this holiday. It didn't turn out very well. It just kept on going the way it was. So, but a lot of it is a precursor to what we have today known as Christmas, a lot of things we do. You know, the gingerbread man cookies, and the Christmas trees, and the people getting drunk, and all kinds of wickedness involved in. People who are living in sin will use and get any excuse they can to have a day of wickedness. They would even take a person in each community would take a person in their community who they didn't like, and they'd basically force them. The whole community would force them to eat and drink and get involved in all kinds of sin. Then they would kill them at the end. Yeah, that's what they would do on December 25th, at the very end of the festival. And during this festival, during this period of time, reminds me of a lot of festivals I've been to preach at, the police would not arrest anyone for damage to property or for violence to anybody. That's what happened during this festival. Reminds me of like Mardi Gras or Belshare. They kind of just relax the rules and let you do whatever you want. So, does it matter what day Jesus was born, and should we celebrate his birthday? Well, it definitely isn't a biblical mandated or even a historically mandated early church celebration. Do we have the freedom to celebrate his birthday if we want to? Well, yeah. There's nothing in the Bible that says you can't celebrate his birthday. There's no restrictions in the Word of God if we want to celebrate his birthday. But if we do celebrate his birthday, it should be done in a godly and a reverent way. Not the way we see the world doing it. Decorated trees, decorated houses, getting lots of gifts, spending lots of money, getting into lots of credit card debt, eating lots of food, being covetous, writing letters to Santa, lying to our children about Santa, watching lots of football. Definitely should not be the focus of celebrating Jesus' birthday. Now, decorating a tree or a house, giving or receiving gifts aren't sinful in and of themselves by any means. But what do those things have to do with the birthday of Jesus? Now, some might be able to say that, if we're talking about the kings coming, there are three kings coming, and they came on the actual day Jesus was born, which he wasn't according to the Bible, and they give gifts, then we have this idea we can give gifts and receive gifts, or God came and gave his son as the greatest gift to the world, therefore we're supposed to give gifts. But if God came to give the greatest gift in the world, his son, shouldn't we be trying to give him to other people? Instead of just giving him physical, material gifts that are going to moth and rust will destroy and will wash away, and they can't help him get into a better place in eternity? That's going to be the better focus. I think it's about time that godly Christian families who desire to celebrate the birth of Jesus do so differently from the world around them. Think about new and improved traditions for your family. Or just don't celebrate it at all. It wouldn't kill us. I mean, I've been raised for 25, 30 years celebrating the birth of Jesus the way the world does it. And it becomes hard every time I go back to my family and they're celebrating it the same way still for me to be involved in it when it really has nothing to do with Jesus for the most part. But it's time to start making new traditions, if we're going to have any traditions at all about the birth of Jesus. So, I think from my study of this and from praying about this, I think God just spoke to my heart that, obviously He doesn't want us to know the exact day. And if He did, He would have made it very, very clear. He has no problem making dates clear. He had no problem making the 24 divisions clear on the Jewish calendar. He would have no problem making this clear either. Okay, that's it for now. You guys have any questions? Good, brother. No, you.
Me?
It's okay.
I missed one of the scripture verses you gave about the dual prophecy from Luke 1:7 and Malachi 4:5.
Sure. Malachi 4:5, and then let's see. Luke 1:17 was an angel Gabriel spoke to John the Baptist's father. And we have John 1:20, where John the Baptist was asked, "Is he Elijah?" He said, "I am not." So he couldn't be the literal Elijah. And then Matthew 17:10 through 13. So
the other question I had was, the ETF, the early church fathers, did they celebrate any of the Jewish festivals? Did you find any of that?
yes, they did.
Which ones did they celebrate, or all of them? Or?
They celebrated Passover. I know that. I think they celebrated Pentecost.
Right.
I'm not so sure they celebrated the Festival of Tabernacles, which is the one that was... Which actually, I didn't mention this, but that was right after Jesus. If Jesus was born on Passover, that's right after Jesus was born. The Feast of the Tabernacles. And tabernacle means dwelt with. And Jesus is God with us. And He would have been circumcised on the 8th day, which means He would have came out during that festival to be circumcised, which is when Jesus came, God in the flesh, came to dwell with man.
And all the priests would have been serving during this 3-week period of all of
Right. All the priests would have been, in fact, just about everyone would have been in the Jerusalem.
So
When Jesus came out to get circumcised.
if we were going in an attempt to try and duplicate those festivals, we would spend 3 weeks at least examining the festivals and what they were about, and maybe not even trying to imitate them or anything, because certainly we probably couldn't do it accurately, but at least trying to examine what the festivals were about during that 3-week time period.
Right.
The Jewish were celebrating Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, Hanukkah, all these different things, and then kind of trying to correlate with these passages out of the Bible. Is that a good summation?
Yeah, I think a good thing to do, and I've been thinking about this, would be to, if we're thinking about celebrating some of the biblical festivals, not because we're trying to be Jewish or has to do with our salvation or anything like that, but it's because we decide we want to celebrate those things. And there is one festival, I can't remember, I think it's the Festival of Tabernacles, it's the eternal one, which will be celebrated in the new kingdom, because God is now dwelling with men for good. So if that's going to be celebrated in eternity, why not get used to it now? It'd be a good thing to do would be to take the Jewish calendar and see when those festivals line up with our calendar and do a topical study during that period of time for each festival. And then once we understand it, we can decide the next year it comes around if we want to celebrate it or not. Yeah.
Another thing that adds to the opaqueness of coming up with any kind of a date is two things. The Jews used a different type of counting that we use. They didn't have a value for 0. So there's a difference between inclusive and exclusive reckoning. So when they say someone was 1 year old, they would say that about a baby that was just born.
Right. It's someone who's in between the birth and the first year.
And they would say that about days. Like if I would say this is the 5th day of the month, it could actually just be the very morning of the 5th day of the month. And they would count that as the entire day.
Right. All my calculations that I figured out for this message are based upon our way of counting.
Right. So
they're not based upon the Jewish way of counting.
Right.
So when it says Elizabeth was 6 months pregnant, I'm assuming she's right in her 6th month. She's not in her 5th month, counting up. She's actually in her 6th month. So that would figure in as well. I didn't start at Passover and work backwards. I was figuring all this stuff out and actually just came to Passover. I find that kind of ironic. I don't know if that's, I don't know if that means anything. But I think God has these festivals for a reason. And I also looked at some of the astronomy about this issue and looked at Revelation chapter 12. And personally, I'm not impressed by any of the astronomy I found and I've looked at. And I actually downloaded a program that I can look at 3 BC and see when some other people are saying he's born, if these constellations are lining up the way they're saying it is, and I'm just not seeing it. So astronomy sometimes, which is God's creation, God put it in place the way He wanted to. That can show us things at times too. But I'm not. There's other people who have come up. Like someone came up with Tishri 1 of 3 BC, which is actually supposedly the very day that creation started. It's called Rosh Hashanah. They celebrate the creation of the world. And someone said that Jesus was born on that day, which that would have been interesting too. And I looked at the astronomical record for that, and it's not as convincing as I thought it would be. But even Revelation 12, I'm not convinced that that's even talking about Mary and Jesus. Because through our study of Revelation, we thought that woman was talking about Sarah, not Mary. So,
On this order of Jewish priests,
yeah.
you've got 12 weeks there. Is there a Feast of the Unleavened Bread in Pentecost every 12 weeks?
No, that's only in that month. That month every year, that month and that week every year. And then there's one other festival later on in the year, which is the Feast of Tabernacles, which they're all there for. So I didn't give you the whole breakdown for the whole year.
Okay.
But, they would, since there's 51 weeks, and there's 3 weeks where they're all serving, that means in a normal Jewish year, you're serving twice, exactly twice. Now, when they add a month to it, of course, the first 4 groups would serve a third time during that year. But they're their only groups so Abijah wouldn't be affected by that. Now, if
4 years.
right. Well, no, that's not every 4 years. It's 7 times every 19 years, about. So every 2 to 3 years. And it's all based upon the priests going out to the fields and looking at the seasons. That what they're trying to do by adding on is keep up with the seasons. Because it's a lunar calendar, not a solar calendar.
This is really related to last week. But how did Elizabeth know the child's name was going to be John?
Oh, Gabriel told Zacharias to name him that.
Zechariah named him.
But he wasn't able to speak and tell her, so he had to write it down or something.
Yeah, he wrote it down. Yep, he wrote it down. That's what it says.
Okay.
Yeah, he wrote it down. As soon as he wrote it down, that's when he could speak, and he said it. Yeah.
He must have brought it to her earlier, though, because she knew before he wrote it down.
Well, he did tell her, but her relatives were trying to pressure her into naming something that was a family name.
Right.
It says,
He must have wrote it down for her before.
okay, it says, well, it doesn't say he wrote it down, but he made signs. Well, he did write it down. Verse 62 of Luke 1. So they made signs to his father what he would have him called, and he asked for a writing tablet and wrote, saying, his name is John. So they all marveled. Immediately his mouth was open, his tongue loosed, and he spoke praising God. So yeah, but obviously she already knew because she was trying to name him John. But the relatives in verse 61 said, there's no one among your relatives who is called by this name. That's when they turned to the father to get his input on it. And they made...
What's the significance of Elijah coming back? I don't understand how they would think that someone who is already dead is going to come back.
Well, he was taken up in a whirlwind,
He wasn't.
Right.
He wasn't.
so he never died.
Yeah, he didn't literally die, but he's removed.
Right? He's removed for a period of time, and he would come back. But he never died a physical death. But when he comes back as a witness in Revelation 11, he will die. He does die then.
So where is he all this time?
I don't know. He's up in the whirlwind. He's up with God. So I don't...
Transfiguration too. So
Yeah.
Moses also, a God who is supernatural, can do these things.
Yeah, we don't really... I don't think we have any... I could be wrong, but I don't think we had a record about when Moses died either. They just said... I think they might have said they buried him. I'm not sure.
But they did argue over his body.
Right. And then also Enoch didn't die. So, if we're going to say that the 2 witnesses, and we went through this in a Revelation study, that it's 2 people who didn't die, those are 3 options we have to start with.
If that's the criteria.
Yeah. So, I think just based on Malachi 4:5, he's going to come back in the end. And it's talking about the great and terrible day of the Lord, to turn the hearts of the fathers back to him. So he's coming to turn the Jews back to Jesus. He was their greatest prophet. All kind of things that no one else did. And then in Revelation, you see him doing all kinds of things that no one else did either. All kinds of miraculous things in Revelation. So there's lots of people who think that the second witness is John the Apostle. Some think it's Moses. Some think it's Enoch. There's all different kinds of... But almost everyone is conclusive of the fact that Elijah is at least one of them. So...
And when they show up, the world will see them, and if we're still alive, we would know.
Right.
Yeah, pretty obvious to us
They start
what's
calling out
going on there
plagues
in
and
Jerusalem.
you start calling on plagues and fire, then you really have to express the truth and unrighteousness to reject that.
Today's communications, you didn't hear about it.
But it's just like the Bible says, that, a wicked and person asks for a sign, then God gives them one, and they still don't believe. Like the people who Jesus fed in the 5,000. Just let him believe. Walked away from him. Because he gave him a couple of hard sayings. They still walked away. And then they crucified him later on. So, signs don't do it, but they can help. All right, anything else anyone wants to add? Objections or questions? Anything else? All the children understood everything?
Oh, that's really good.
Deers in headlight look? Okay. Okay, that's it.